Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. Today we will be discussing 3 questions, 1 question on current affair and 2 questions from GS4, that is ethics syllabus. We will be dealing these topic, that is public civil services values and ethics in public administration. Let's take an overview of all the 3 questions. The very first question is related to conscience. The second is related to environmental ethics, and the third, which is current affair based question, it is related to agricultural exports and how to increase that. Let's start with the very first question. There is a higher court than courts of justice, and that is the court of conscience. So the question is saying that there are multiple courts where the justice can be delivered, but the highest court of justice is the court of conscience. Means the importance of conscience with regard to civil servant, with regard to citizens, what are the different ethical dilemmas and how conscience can play a role in clearing that doubts. So this is the question, quotation based question. So you can start the introduction with the sayings of Mahatma Gandhi, that this is the quote given by Mahatma Gandhi, and he tells the very significant role of conscience it plays in dealing with the resolving of ethical dilemmas in day-to-day life. You can start with the basic definition of conscience also, that it is very innate or the inherent capacity to judge, to decide, to discriminate between right and wrong. It is also the ethical intuition which comes from wisdom and that urges to do the right thing over wrong. You can also write about the Mahatma Gandhi ideologies like non-violent resistance and satyagraha that was based on the higher conscience, and he believed that these activities which were based on the higher conscience could supersede the legal framework when it comes to matter of justice and morality. So this is the question. You can set the introduction, you can set the context in the introduction, either the depending on quotation by Mahatma Gandhi, or you can write something with related to the definition of conscience. Then the question is that there is the topmost court, that is the court of conscience, and it tells you how to perform the task when you are in the ethical dilemma, when you are in the doubts. Then it's your conscience that tells you how to proceed to do that particular task or job. So you can also write that the conscience plays a very significant role in the life of civil servant or the other citizens, because the civil servant or the other citizens, they have to perform some task. Like if we take the example of civil servant, so civil servant have some discretionary powers. They have to take decision when no other laws or norms are there. When there is conflict of interest. When there is a requirement to provide justice and fairness, etc., then these conscience plays a significant role. Like conscience will decide, will help in taking the decision to perform the discretionary power, so as to not take inappropriate actions which is very crucial for the lives of other or for the society at large. Then when there is not a law or regulations prevailing in that particular domain, then it is the conscience of a civil servant or any citizen that can help in taking the decision, that if we can take particular decision according to our conscience which is in line with our values, belief system, our opinions, that is for the welfare of the other person. Then in the times of conflict of interest or when we are in the ethical dilemmas, then it is our conscience that tells us to take the right decision. Then comes the justice and fairness. Again, it's the same thing, that our conscience will tell that this is fair, this is just for the other person as well. So we should take this path. And it comes from our environment, other beliefs, the values from the society, from our family, etc. Also, when there is a lack of conscience, there are chances of moral corruption also. There are the very high chances that the corruption can happen. Laws and regulations can take care of the corruption prospects, but it is about the conscience of that particular person that he will do the corruption or not. So it helps in prevention of corruption, upholding the human rights so as to not violate the human rights of the other person. It's about the conscience. Then the empathy and the compassion. With the conscience, empathy and compassion comes. Then the personal integrity, about being honest, about being integrity in our work. So these are the role of conscience. You can give examples in each of the question, in each of the argument, like when there is a lack of conscience, how corruption can happen, and how with conscience some IAS officer has denied to take the bribery from any particular person. You can quote some examples by giving the names or the good practices prevailing in our society. Upholding human rights, you can give example of T.N. Seshan. During the emergency time, he uphold the human rights and did not go along with the measures or the rules and regulations which are unconstitutional and which were violating the human rights. Then empathy and compassion. You can write example of Mahatma Gandhi, that he went to South Africa just to fight a case, but there he saw the apartheid and the basic human rights violation of the indentured labor. So he did the satyagraha, non-violent resistance over there for the overall welfare of the society. It was his conscience who told him, who asked him to perform some activities like non-violent resistance and satyagraha for the welfare of the society at large. Then the personal integrity, our conscience will tell us how to do some tasks or perform some function which are in sync with our value system, with our belief, so as to maintain the personal integrity. Next comes the conclusion. You can write that the importance of conscience or the imperative of the conscience, that balancing laws and conscience is very imperative. Laws and regulation will decide what is wrong and what is right, but you can only perform with those laws or the rules and the regulation when your conscience allow to do that. So conscience is much more above than the rules and the regulations. Then conscience acts as a motivator for the integrity also. So this way you can write your answer. Model answer. The very first thing, Mahatma Gandhi's quotation base. Then next is how conscience can be more reliable beacon for the civil servant. Then laws, rules and regulations. Like in the prevention of corruption, laws and regulations are there to prevent the corruption, but it is our conscience who tell not to take the bribe. So these are some practices, examples. Like second is upholding human right. The conscience of the civil servant can often be more reliable guide than laws and regulation when it comes to the upholding human right. See, laws and regulations are there not to do the human right violations in prisons, but it is taking place. So somewhere laws and regulations do not work, but it is on the conscience of the jailer or the authorities or the jail authorities so as to not to take up these activities which are against the human rights. Then empathy and compassion. Like laws and regulations are there, but they can sometimes be rigid and inflexible. Let's take an example of an old and destitute woman who comes to a civil servant who is asking for some basic benefits of the scheme, but she does not have the basic eligibility criteria, some reports or some papers, like she does not have Aadhaar card, she does not have ration card. So it's about the ethical dilemma of a civil servant whether to give the natural justice or the basic human rights such as food and the basic benefits of that particular scheme to that old and destitute woman, or he should properly abide by the laws and regulations because that woman is not complying with the rules, that she does not have any of the paper to show her eligibility criteria. So in this way, in this particular case study, civil servants should see beyond the rules and regulations with empathy and with compassion, depends on his conscience that okay, no, he has to take measures for this destitute woman. Then personal integrity we have already discussed. Finally, concluding with the conclusion that conscience can serve as a powerful motivator for the civil servant to act with the integrity, empathy and moral courage in the service of the greater good. Let's see the second question. What ethical principles should guide public policy decisions on environmental issues? And how can these principles be incorporated into the decision making process? The very first thing is, what are the ethical principles that should be considered while doing the environmental issues policy making? First, we need to tell the ethical principles, and then how these principles can be incorporated into the decision making process. So we have to write the ways how we will incorporate into the decision making process or the public policy process, so that it ensures the sustainable and the equitable outcomes. So the question is about the environmental ethics. So you can simply define environmental ethics and what this environmental ethics is all about. So it tends to study the ethical relationship between environment and human. Means human and environment plus flora and fauna and non-human things. It also tells about the value and the status of environment. Like recently, Uttarakhand High Court has given the human rights status to the river Ganges. So you can write this introduction. And all the issues like air pollution, water pollution, loss of biodiversity, climate change, etc., ocean acidification, these are all the part of the environmental ethics debate. So next comes the body part, ethical principles in the environmental policy. So what are the ethical principles that should be considered while making the policy for environmental issues that should deal with the environmental issues? The very first thing is, we should make the public policy that do not harm the environment. We should consider that whatever the development, infrastructural project, whatever we are doing, it should not do the harm to the environment. Example, banning of DDT in India to protect the birds population. Or we should take the precautionary measure. If we have the strong suspicion that this thing, if we would proceed with this particular task, that it would hamper the environment in the long run. So we should halt at that particular time instead of taking the evidences that cannot be reversed back. Like halt of the projects near the Western Ghats for the ecological conservation. Next is, we should take the sustainable development in mind while doing any of the public policy or the environmental policy. We should consider the sustainable development, the development which should be sustained for the longer period of time. Like we should reduces the fossil fuel consumption. We should increase the renewable sources of energy sources, like we should promote electric vehicle. We should do organic farming. We should not proceed or promote the fertilizers or the chemical use in the agriculture. We should promote cooperative farming. Our laws, our policies should be in favor of all these particular things which promotes the sustainable development. Next is equity. Public policy should be in such a way that it should provide the equity, justice to the society, to the communities. It should be the fair and justice providing. Like the Forest Right Act, this act recognizes the tribal rights in the conservation and in the protection of the forest. Then comes the solidarity. Our public policies or the policies, infrastructural or the economic developmental policies should be such that it should enhances the solidarity. We as a civil servant also will look for the sustainable development, for the solidarity purposes, like who have the same goal or the aim or the common goal or the good for the society. Next is the policies should have the rational mind. It should be made on the scientific knowledge and the integrity. Like preserving mangroves is based on the scientific importance in the coastal protection. So we should not destroy these mangroves. So these are the rational thinking behind why not to destroy the mangroves, because they help provide the support for the coastal protection, not to do the coastal erosion. So these are some ethical principles in the environmental policy. The next part is incorporating principles in the policy making. How these principles are incorporated in the policy making. First we need to identify the stakeholders. Stakeholders as in the citizen, the region, the economy, the sector, basic communities, which will hamper from the economic development or which are into the environmental issues. So first we need to identify the stakeholders. Then we should do the capacity building of the bureaucrats of the community. Bureaucrats as in, if they need to do the purpose which will not hamper the environment, so they require some specific skills, that how to identify the stakeholders, what should be the alternative techniques, how to use the advanced technology, how to use the artificial intelligence so as to minimize the impact to the environment. So these are some capacity building measures which need to be inculcated into the bureaucrats. Next is the capacity building of the community, so that they should also consider, while taking the steps in the decision making, they should be the active stakeholder, not just a passive recipient. Next is promoting the citizens' participation. Again, when the community or the citizen will be capacitated enough so that they can take part in the decision making, like the policy making, policy implementation, and the policy monitoring, evaluation, etc. This citizen is an active participant by taking part and giving the feedback that this is requirement, this is not the requirement, this can be improved, and this is our right, this is our demand, so that the government will amend those policies in accordance to the demand of the citizens or the community at large. Next is environment centric laws. Overall, our policy should be dominated with the environment centric, as an environment as the locus standi, so that the policy should not hamper the environment. Instead, it instills the capacity to preserve the environment. Like if we are coming up with the enhancing of the vehicles, so we should promote EV instead of other diesel and the petrol based automobiles. Finally comes the conclusion. You can give some case study, or you can also write that these are some basic ethical principles which should be considered while designing the policies or while making the public policy as far as environment is concerned. You can also give the case study of Finland, that Finland is the greenest of the countries, and it is promoting the environmental centric laws. So you can give the case study of Finland, and you can also write that environmental ethics act as a cornerstone for the ethical public policy in the conservation of environment. So this way, second question is completed. Let's see the model answer. Environmental ethics, what it is, then in ethical principles to guide the public policy decision on environmental issues, then how these principles can be incorporated into the decision making by adopting the following measures. Finally, putting some case study. You can also read some broad principle as far as environmental ethics are concerned. Then finally concluding it with the why we need to promote it in a modern day governance. Now let's move on to the third question. Enumerate the present challenges faced by India in promoting agricultural exports. So we need to write the challenges in promoting agricultural exports. So you can give some background with respect to agricultural exports status in introduction, that exports have seen the peak, has increased the boost in 2022-23, approximately $50 billion, and also imports have risen up by, like, total of imports cost $35 billion. Although the trade has increased, but trade surplus is somewhat balanced by the increasing imports. So there are some challenges, there are some policy challenges which hampers the agricultural exports. We need to write those points in our body part. Then the very first thing is export policy restrictions. Export policy restriction means our Indian export policies is such that it benefits the domestic consumer instead of farmers who want to export their goods, their commodities to the global world. Like, government has put a limit on MEP, that is the export price, approximately like $1,300 on basmati rice. Means it is very high that exporter will restrain to buy from the mandis and sell it to the export market. So these ceilings or the very minimum basic price for the export, these are very high in nature, that it restricts the export of the agricultural products. Next is subsidy driven schemes. In India, farmers grow the crops that are subsidy driven, like whatever the government is giving high MSP, farmer prefers that crop to grow because it will ensure the sustainability or the security that their crops will be sold in the market. Rather, government should promote according to the demand of the market. Farmers should sow the crops according to what is required in the market, what is the demand of the market, not according to the subsidies, whatever the government is providing. This hampers the financial stability of the agriculture sector as well. And second, it will not be competitive much because the free subsidies like free fertilizers, free power, free water is there for the farmer. So he thinks that these basic necessities or the basic inputs are free for him. But finally, when we are exporting it to the other countries, this costs huge. It reduces the competitiveness in the global market because the other countries' product are cheaper and of the high quality as well. Then next is inadequate R&D. Government is providing much more funds on the subsidies, fertilizer, power, etc. instead on R&D. According to Economic Survey 2022, it says that if we spend 1 rupee on R&D, it will reap the much more profit than we spend 1 rupee on fertilizer or the power subsidy. Approximately 10 times or 20 times the more benefits will be there. Then quality and standards. India's agricultural products have less compliance or the low compliance with the standards like phytosanitary measures of the other countries. So this creates a challenge. Next is infrastructure. There are the huge infrastructure issues with respect to storage, transportation, processing. So this creates the post-harvest losses. And when the post-harvest losses are there, it means there are less agricultural goods that are left with India or a country to export. So it increases the prices of that particular agricultural product, hence decreases the competitiveness. Next is the pricing and the quality competitiveness. Again, the pricing, the agricultural products of India are not very competitive due to freebies, and quality issues are also there. So this is very less competitive in the global market. Also, it hampers by the exchange rate fluctuations. So these are some challenges with the agricultural exports products. Finally, conclusion, you can write steps ahead for the stable agricultural exports. The very first thing is infrastructural development. Infrastructural development for storage, transportation, processing houses should be there so as to reduce the post-harvest losses. Next is diversification of agricultural basket. Instead of just relying or making dependent on MSPs or the free subsidies or the fertilizers or the power, it should be according to the global demand. So it should be diversified. Like in the recent times, it is diversifying into the organic moringa leaves powder, carrot seeds are getting exported. So now the export basket is getting diversified. Quality assurance, there should be product specific export quality forums are there under APEDA, which under like 7 of the export products are there, which ensures the quality. Then farmer welfare and the involvement. So our topmost priority should be the farmers welfare, so as to double their income, so as to maintain the security and the sustainability of those farmers. For that we need to make the expanded market, we need to make the market more larger, so that they can sell their products with more of the choices, with the good rates as well. And we should also promote the involvement in the decision making process as far as the export of the agriculture products are concerned. So for that, India has come up with the Farmers Connect portal, where they can directly connect with the exporters of the agricultural products. Model answer, introduction, what we have read already, challenges and the steps ahead instead of conclusion, because the question does not ask specifically about the steps, so we can write the steps as a way forward. So this completes our discussion for today. Thank you and have a nice day.